two cops stopped a black man on a quiet street, accusing him of a crime he didn't commit. They had no idea he was the state's chief prosecutor, ready to expose their lies and the system's corruption. What happened next shocked everyone. But let's start at the beginning. Thomas Brooks, a tall, middle-aged black man in a crisp navy suit, walked through the quiet suburban streets of Maplewood. It was late, and the glow of streetlights cast long shadows on the empty road. Thomas was heading home after a grueling day preparing for a high-profile case. The briefcase in his hand felt heavier than usual, but his mind buzzed with thoughts of strategy for tomorrow. As he rounded a corner, the familiar blue and red lights of a police car lit up the street. Thomas stopped instinctively, raising his hands slightly to show he wasn't a threat. The cruiser pulled up alongside him, and two officers stepped out. "Evening," said Officer Harris, a stout man in his 40s with a cynical smirk. "What are you doing out here this late?" "Walking home," Thomas replied evenly, keeping his tone measured. "Is there a problem?" Harris exchanged a glance with his younger partner, Officer Daniels, who looked hesitant. "Got a call about a burglary," Harris said, folding his arms. "You fit the description." Thomas blinked. "A burglary? I just left my office downtown. I'm a lawyer." Harris chuckled humorlessly. "A lawyer? Huh. What's in the briefcase?" "Then? Stolen goods?" Daniels shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. "I can assure you," Thomas said, "it's legal documents. You're welcome to see." Harris snatched the briefcase without asking. Ignoring Thomas's protest, he opened it, rifling through neatly stacked papers. "Huh," Harris said with mock surprise. "Looks like someone's trying a little too hard to look innocent." "This is harassment," Thomas said, his voice firm. "I haven't done anything wrong." "That's for us to decide," Harris snapped. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "On what grounds?" Thomas demanded, his patience thinning. "You have no evidence." Harris grabbed Thomas roughly, cuffing him before he could finish. "Resisting an officer. For starters," he growled. "Let's see what else we can add." Daniels hesitated, then reached for his radio. "Dispatch. We're bringing in a suspect," he muttered, avoiding Thomas's gaze. Thomas was pushed into the back of the cruiser, his heart pounding, not from fear, but from anger. He stayed silent, vowing that this injustice would not stand. At the station, Thomas was ushered into a stark, fluorescent-lit booking area. The air smelled of disinfectant and stale coffee, and the distant hum of ringing phones and muffled voices added to the oppressive atmosphere. Harris, his smirk as sharp as his condescension, took charge of processing Thomas, while Daniels lingered uneasily by the door. Thomas's belongings were stripped from him methodically: wallet, phone, briefcase, each item cataloged with the carelessness of someone who had already made up their mind about him. As Thomas was placed in a small, cold cell with steel bars and peeling paint, Harris began typing up the charges in the adjacent room. His report painted Thomas as a dangerous criminal, burglary, resisting arrest, and possession of stolen property. The truth was irrelevant. Harris crafted a narrative to justify his actions, embellishing every detail. Daniel stood nearby, arms crossed, his jaw tight. He seemed to wrestle with an inner conflict, but his silence spoke volumes. Compliance, even at the cost of justice, was the easier path. In the sterile quiet of his cell, Thomas sat on a hard bench bolted to the wall. He stared at the floor, his thoughts a storm of disbelief and anger. Through the bars, he could hear Harris boasting to another officer in the hallway. "Another one off the streets," Harris said with a chuckle. "Can't wait to see the look on his face when the court throws the book at him." Thomas's hands clenched into fists. The man who had dedicated his life to dismantling systemic racism was now its victim. His pulse pounded with a mix of anger and resolve. He wasn't just going to walk away from this. He was going to fight. The next morning, Thomas used his one phone call to contact his legal team. By noon, his assistant, Sarah Whitman, stormed into the station with a stack of evidence that not only invalidated the charges but hinted at Harris's misconduct. Thomas was released within hours, his freedom hard-won but far from enough. As he walked out, His mind was set on one thing: exposing the corruption that nearly destroyed him. A week later, the courtroom buzzed with tension. Every seat was filled with spectators, reporters, and legal professionals eager to witness the trial. At the prosecution table, Officer Harris lounged confidently, his expression one of smug assurance, while Officer Daniels fidgeted beside him, his discomfort evident in the way he avoided eye contact. Seated between them was Linda Graves, the district's formidable star prosecutor, renowned for her unrelenting tough-on-crime stance. She sifted through her notes methodically, sparing only a cursory glance at Thomas as he entered the room. Thomas, however, walked with the composure of a man who held all the cards. His tailored suit and calm demeanor commanded attention as he approached the defense table, setting his briefcase down with deliberate precision. The room quieted as the judge entered and called the court to order. As proceedings began, Thomas stood, his voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, I will be representing myself." A ripple of astonished whispers swept through the courtroom. Harris's smirk faltered, and Graves shot Thomas a sharp, scrutinizing look. This unexpected move was not part of their script. Over the next hour, Thomas systematically dismantled the prosecution's case with surgical precision. He began by presenting video footage from a nearby ATM, timestamped to show he was nowhere near the scene of the alleged burglary. The clarity of the footage left no room for doubt. Then came the bombshell, an audio recording from the squad car. The courtroom held its collective breath as Harris's voice played over the speakers, mocking Thomas and admitting that no suspect even matched the alleged crime. Graves' objections came fast and furious, but each was overruled. The evidence was irrefutable. Finally, Thomas called Officer Daniels to the stand. The young officer hesitated, his hands trembling as he was sworn in. Under Thomas's measured yet pointed questioning, Daniels cracked. It wasn't right," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "There was no evidence. Harris, he told me to make it look legitimate." The courtroom erupted in shock and murmurs. Harris jumped to his feet, shouting, "He's lying!" But the damage was done. The truth had shattered their facade, leaving only the wreckage of their lies behind. With the case crumbling, Graves abruptly requested a recess. But Thomas wasn't done. He rose again, his voice steady. "Your Honor, there's one more piece of evidence I'd like to submit." He approached the bench, handing the judge a file. "This is my resume," Thomas said, turning to face the room. "Before the officers arrested me without cause, before they fabricated charges, I was preparing for this week's trial. You see, I'm not just a lawyer. I'm the chief prosecutor of this state." Stunned silence filled the room. "And I will not stand for corruption," Thomas continued, his voice rising. "Not in my office, not in my state, and certainly not from those sworn to uphold the law." Harris paled, his bravado gone. Graves looked down, defeated. The judge called for order, and within minutes, the charges against Thomas were dismissed. But the fallout was far from over. Thomas filed a formal complaint against Harris, leading to an internal investigation that uncovered years of misconduct. Harris was stripped of his badge, and Daniels, though complicit, cooperated fully, earning a second chance under probation. Weeks later, Thomas stood at a podium outside the courthouse, addressing a crowd of reporters. "This isn't just about me," he said. "It's about a system that allows injustice to thrive. But together, we can change it." The crowd erupted in applause as Thomas stepped back, a man vindicated but not satisfied. His fight was far from over.